Welcome to Wheels Boy. Denza, a once unloved joint venture between BYD and Mercedes-Benz, is undergoing something of a renaissance. Their last model, the D9 MPV, was pretty impressive, but in order to find out whether that was a one-off or the beginning of a new trend, we're going to need to try out their second new model, the Denza N7 electric SUV.
With hands-on test drives and reviews of exciting Chinese market vehicles, Wheels Boy is the #1 source for China auto insights. Be sure to check us out on Instagram and Facebook. The N7 is the brand's latest and most important model, a mid-size SUV that's going to be taking on the likes of the Neo ES6, Avatar 1.1, and maybe even the Hi-Fi Y. Prices for the N7 range from $42,000 to $53,000 before options.
The official name for the Denza design language is Pi Motion. Pi as in the mathematical symbol pi. It's fair then to refer to this as the Pi Motion face. Now, I was pretty lukewarm on the Pi Motion face when I saw it earlier this year, but having had time to process my feelings and spending more time with the car in person, I have to say, I'm still pretty lukewarm on it. I do think it's unique, for which they deserve credit, and I do like these crystal-like LEDs here on the front, but overall, I just think it looks a bit, droopy. This rear three-quarter view is undoubtedly the best one on the N7 because it shows off its relatively low stance as compared to its premium competitors. Denza actually refers to this car as a shooting brake, but I think that's stretching the truth well past its breaking point. That is an SUV, and it's better off for being an SUV because SUVs are what mainstream buyers want these days.
The N7 has available air suspension, which automatically lowers when you open the trunk, giving you better access to the 480-liter rear cargo area. That's noticeably less space than the Neo ES6, likely due to the steeply raked roofline of the Denza.
The N7 has vehicle-to-load capability, which means that it can be used to charge external devices, say a refrigerator or something like that, at up to 6 kilowatts. It also has vehicle-to-vehicle capability. That means that it can charge another electric car, but up to 60 kilowatts. But the plot thickens when we get to the other side of the car, because what do we have here? A second fast charging port. That's right, this thing can fast charge from either side of the car, which obviously gives you more flexibility when you're choosing a charging station. But the N7 can also fast charge from both sides of the car at the same time. In fact, if you want to achieve its maximum charging power of 230 kilowatts, you have to charge from both sides at the same time. If you're just charging from one side, it's limited to 150 kilowatts.
Denza claims that the N7 can charge up to 100 kilometers of range in just 4 minutes and 350 kilometers of range in just 15 minutes.
The interior of the Denza N7 looks and feels every bit like a premium vehicle should, including high-quality materials throughout. This is real wood, for example, as opposed to the very cheap fake plastic wood of the last generation Denza X SUV. You also have standard leather seats that are soft and supportive, and also have heated, cooling, and massaging function for the front row and heating for the rear. The N7 has an augmented reality heads-up display as standard, as well as a 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster. The center screen is 2.5K, 17.3 inches, and uses a UI that reminds me quite a bit of the one in the Huawei Harmony OS that we saw in other cars here in China. Once you dig into the menus, however, you quickly realize this is much more akin to the systems available in other BYD brands. That's not a bad thing, though, because those look pretty good.
There is also a 10.25-inch passenger screen, which is nice to have, but it feels a bit undersized when compared to the 15-inch monitor in the Hi-Fi Y, a similarly sized, albeit more expensive competitor. Watching a feature-length film on it feels a bit like going to see your favorite band, but getting tickets that are just a few rows farther back than you wanted.
The N7 has two wireless charging pads here, which can charge at up to 50 watts. I know, because they've helpfully written it in big font on both sides. aft of that is the increasingly mandatory on premium vehicles crystal shift knob and two little crystal switches. Now, this is a BYD group product, and they are fully committed to having these touch capacitive buttons here, no matter how many angry letters I write them. These are essentially invisible in even the lightest sunlight, but they're actually much more visible than the stuff up here on the dashboard. On either end of the dashboard are these little displays that show the current temperature and fan speed for the two different climate zones up here. They are not touchscreens. However, below them is a row of touch capacitive buttons that can control the temperature, the fan speed, and open and close the vents. These are somehow even less visible in sunlight than the center console here. Honestly, these things look very cool at night, but during the day, they might as well not even be there. The N7 is the first mass-produced vehicle to feature a sound system from DVLA. It has 16 speakers, which is notably fewer than you get in cars like the ES6 and the Hi-Fi Y, which are 20 plus. And indeed, the surround sound effect isn't quite as strong as it is in those vehicles. The bass, though, the bass is powerful. The second row of the N7 is heated as standard, like I mentioned before. In terms of space, well, you got a 2.95 meter wheelbase, so you've got tons of legroom and a pretty decent amount of headroom above, especially for a car with such a low roof. I'm 5'9" tall, 1.75 meters, just for reference. In terms of other features, well, you've got your buttons here for your heated seats, and you've got a couple of USB ports. You've also got adjustable rake, which does make these a bit more comfortable, but it's kind of hard to adjust because you have to use this lever on the top of the seat, especially when you're going forward. A notable feature that it doesn't have is a panel for adjusting the air conditioning back here. Some of its competitors do have that. Part of my job as a car reviewer is to memorize a lot of facts and figures when it comes to battery sizes and ranges, so I love it when a car company makes it easy for me. The N7 comes with but a single battery pack option, a 91.3 kilowatt hour lithium iron phosphate blade battery. In the rear motor version of this car, that provides a CLTC range of 702 kilometers. In the dual motor, it's 630.
The Denza N7 has the exact same powertrain options as the BYD Seal sedan, meaning that rear motor version pumps out 230 kilowatts and 360 newton meters of torque, while the dual motor makes 390 kilowatts and 670 newton meters.
The rear motor version will get you to 100 kilometers per hour in 6.8 seconds, which is adequate, while the dual motor will do the deed in 3.9 seconds, which is more than adequate. The N7 is the first model from any BYD brand to feature the option of Lidar units. That should provide a much improved driver assistance system, long a weak point for the BYD brands. Now, that system is said to also be able to scan the road ahead to preemptively adjust the air suspension in response to road conditions. This car does not have the optional Lidar units, and as is so often the case with the pre-production test vehicles that we get for reviews, its ADAS system has not been activated. But while I can only speak in theoretical terms about the performance of the Lidar units, I can speak in real-world terms about the performance of that air suspension. And it's worth talking about because it is yet another first for any BYD brand. It's called DSys A, and I have to admit that I had high expectations for it because I drove the D9 MPV and I found its non-air ride suspension to be very, very comfortable. I figured that adding air ride would take the N7 to even higher levels of comfort and poise.
But truth be told, there is room for improvement in this first attempt. The suspension transmits some harsh vibrations when going over road imperfections, and I don't just mean huge potholes and speed bumps. It's soft, but not especially isolated. That's all well and good if the N7 compensates you with engaging driving dynamics, but I'm afraid that's not the case. Denza markets this as a sporty SUV, even giving it a special drift mode, but while it can pass just about anything else on the road when you put your foot down and even do massive power slides, the steering is light and numb, just like almost every other Chinese electric SUV, and the brake pedal is too soft. Overall, the actual driving experience isn't particularly thrilling unless you're at the limits.
In other words, I don't think they quite nailed that perfect balance between sportiness and comfort that you can achieve with a really well-tuned air suspension. You know who does achieve that balance? Mercedes-Benz. They do still have a 10% stake in this little joint venture. Might be worth reaching out to see if they have any advice. So, does the N7 prove that the D9 was more than just a one-off success? I think it does, but take it as an indication of what I think this brand is truly capable of when I say there's still room for improvement.